Hello, everyone. Welcome to my science journey. We are glad to have you here today. This last month of 2025, actually, we have started a new series which we have termed Unwritten Rules in Science. And this is because we think there is more to just the, spoken rules or the spoken the written rules that someone is normally assigned that they needed to be able to thrive in sort of their career. And so in this regard, we have our very first guest, who is Dr. Tabitha Mwangi. Most of you probably know her as the current program director for the Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program at the University of Cambridge. But before that, she was a scientist. She did like epidemiology. She worked with like malaria research. And today she's gonna tell us more about that, as well as the unspoken or the unwritten rules that she had to navigate that sort of like got her to the point that she is today, thriving in her career in administration as it is of now. She's also an author, so if you don't know that, you need to check out her current book, 12 Remarkable Life Scientists, on Amazon worldwide. So make sure to get that particular book. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tabitha, for honoring our invite and for being here today. We are so glad to have you.
You.
Okay, so we are gonna start with a little icebreaker before we dive in. And for this particular case, I'm just gonna ask you what seems like a very long question, but I'll try to summarize it. So you have built a career that bridges science, storytelling, and mentorship. When you look back, is there a particular moment that made you realize that, science could actually be more than lab work, that it could shape lives and narratives as well?
I don't think I would say that there was a road to Damascus moment when it comes to the decisions that come with life. I think you make decisions as you go along. So, for example, when I finished my PhD, I decided to take a break, and I was also as women, I was just having my last child, and I thought I don't want to keep up this pace. I want to do something different. And I was also quite keen to write, and I wasn't sure quite, what I was going to write. It was, something that I needed to do. And I read somewhere, write what you know. And I started writing about science. And the more I wrote, the more, and that was a long time ago. So there was not that many articles that are science related in our newspapers back in Kenya. So it was quite an adventure. And that's when I could see the thirst, and I wrote a lot in the Daily Nation. I started my own blog. And when I was doing a piece on scientists in the East African is when I thought, okay, I've written this in the East African. How many young people from the African continent are actually going to read this newspaper? And that's where now that dream of, having a book that is easily accessible came about. So it's just been a long, winding route. There's no clear path that I can say this is when I made this decision.
Absolutely. So tell us about this book. Can you like sort of summarize what the book tells us, especially for people that haven't had a chance to read it yet?
Yeah, so the book was driven by the fact that I wanted to write something actually that I wish I had when I was young. Because one thing when you're growing up is that you don't see scientists. When you look at textbooks, it's one, Jenner and Fleming and all these white men with long curly hair, and there's not much you can relate to.
Yeah.
And I was always wishing that that there was access to material like that. And so I wrote articles for the East Africa quite a while ago. I interviewed quite a number of women, and a series of articles were published. It's called The Sisterhood. And that's when I thought, why not expand? Why not have it? But I did want a book that would be available everywhere. So one thing I wanted people to see is that scientists can come from anywhere, that you don't have to be clever, the standard, cleverness that we prize so much in order to be a scientist. You just need to be somebody who really puts your energy to it. And I've noticed over time that actually the people who weren't that great in school make very good scientists because they're not conceited, they're aware of their weaknesses, and they're willing to put the effort. And I wanted to put that across that, getting a PhD, doing very well in science is not about being number one in class. It's about being really passionate about something and being willing to put the work. And all these scientists that are interviewed, you'll see, okay, they're those sharp ones, but actually the sharp ones are fewer than the ones who actually struggled through, but put in the work, and they're doing really, really well now.
And I'm glad that you've actually brought this up, and that, scientists can actually come from various places, and that you've actually put this in a book. And even for us at My Science Journey, because the idea is to spotlight different pathways that scientists have taken, as well as just spotlight the work that they are doing. And I feel like this is an incredible resource, particularly for this community as well. So if you haven't heard of the book yet, now you've heard about it, make sure to go and get it. It's available on Amazon. All right, so before we dive in, Dr. Reed, so you are now an administrator, but before you are in sort of like what I would term the real science. I mean, I'm open to be challenged about that. But so can you speak to us about that journey? How did you transition from being a scientist to now an administrator?
Yeah. So the transition was not planned. So it was not something that I told myself, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave science and do this. It is things that I think for my life, that's the story of my life, is that things aren't quite as planned. So when I was in Kenya, I finished my PhD in a while ago. And then I took a break to write. So I did a lot of freelance science journalism before I went back to the university. So I went back to Pwani University. I was a senior lecturer in public health, and I helped set up that program of public health there. I really enjoyed it. But at some point, I'd done about 2-3 years. My husband and I and the family moved to the UK for his job and stuff. So I was jobless for a while before I found a job in Anglia Ruskin University again as a public health lecturer. I'm sorry about the lights. It requires movement. And so I taught there for a while. I did research for a while, but I didn't actually get to do research, actually, to be honest. There was lots of issues. I'm not going to the details of the issues. And I thought I better resign for my own sake. So I resigned, and I got a job as a program manager in Cambridge, Africa. And when I got that job, I told myself, and I'm just going to, just hold on to it for a little bit. And then I'll get a job in academia and I'll move out. But just about 2 years in, this Mastercard Foundation program opened, and they seconded me from Cambridge, Africa, to come and run this, manage the program here. So when I started it, I realized that there was a lot going on. There are amazing things that we're bringing young people from the African continent to do a master's in Cambridge. I found that I was quite useful in kind of just setting up a program that is very Afrocentric, very much thinking about the scholars, very much ensuring that the program meets the needs of the scholars and does things differently from what other programs do, and aligns with the Mastercard Foundation, which very keen for things to work in a certain way. So I found that very fulfilling, and I don't think I'm ever going back to academia, which is my PhD supervisor hates that I say that, but I don't think I'm going back. I'm quite happy where I am now.
Welcome to the real world. This is to be in.
Yes.
But it's actually good that you found your footing and that you're happy, and it's fulfilling for you to be in that particular space. And we're gonna speak about the Cambridge Africa program in a bit. But before we go to that, I know you've mentioned that you moved from Pwani University to Anglo Ruskin University, and then now to Cambridge. Are there lessons along the way that you feel like you were not taught, or they were not written somewhere, but sort of like you had to learn quickly as you sort of navigated those different work environments?
Yeah, I think one of the lessons I would pass on to my younger self a bit earlier is to just know when to shift. That just because you've done a training in X doesn't mean that X has to be. It has to be the one and only, and you sit there and you push and you push and you push. There is that point where you realize, and even when openings come, you don't see them because you're so busy, you're so one-track minded. And I understand the issue with resilience. You need to be resilient. Of course, you don't just have a little hiccup and you're, I'm leaving, you kind of persevere, you give it 2 years or something and it's still not doing it for you. You've given it 2 years, you've given it 3 years. Then you need to start thinking, okay, what's happening here? If it's just maybe the research is not going the way you want, you can, change something or something. I'm not saying you give up quickly. Yeah. All I'm saying is that you need to listen to yourself. I don't know whether that makes sense. Listen to yourself. When things aren't really working, you're going to work exhausted, you're living exhausted, you're not there, your presence isn't there. Things can be hard, but you're determined because your heart is in it. You really want to
you're like, I have to keep moving.
Have to keep moving. But sometimes your heart is not in it, you're tired, you're given a year, you've got on holiday, you've come back, you're still tired. And your whole body is telling you, come on, just do something different. So try and listen, try and see opportunities when they come. If it's a difficulty, but it's in an area that you're really keen about and you want to pursue, because being a good scientist is being persistent. Nobody makes it by giving up on the first step. If you read the stories, everybody gets to a point where they get stuck, but they persevere and they get through. But if it is working against you and you're just unhappy, it's not where you want to be willing to move. People will laugh at you. I mean, like, I remember when I left, I was working in KEMRI and I decided, no, I'm going to be a freelance science writer. I mean, some people even actually stopped talking to me because they just thought, this is a sign of failure. And that thing of you're not inspiring us. Who are you? What are you trying to tell us? And there was a lot of backlash, but I was very much at peace with my decision. You made a decision when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm so glad. And it continues to feel that way. So it's important to be just aware that sometimes you'll make decisions that nobody will like, that sometimes you'll make decisions that go against everything everybody else is telling you. But you've got to, stick with what you believe. Just mind. I'm not telling you to give up. Yeah. I'm just saying that sometimes you may need to pivot and be willing to take the flack when people are difficult, and also to forgive. It's not a big deal. That somebody called you whatever they called you. It is life. They're also learning. You grow with them, and you go back and you say, "Do you remember what you said?" And you laugh about it. It is just life. And sometimes we go in different directions. We are not all going to be professors. Professorship, you become a professor and you go and you're so stressed, So, pivot, go with them, do what is good for you and your people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And even for us here, that is what we are trying to actually show people, that you don't have to stick to the, if you want to be a professor, that's good. You can stick to the paths of being PhD, postdoc, assistant professor, full professor, etc. If that works for you, well and good. Exactly. But here we're also showing you that there's actually various routes that you can take that people like you started from, and they're thriving in those particular paths. So you don't have to have your mind fixated on, this, I have to do it. And like the way Tabitha has mentioned, that if it's not working, move, transition, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, Tabitha. And so I'm gonna take a quick break here and ask the audience to start typing their questions in the chat. If you have a question for Daktari here, please start putting them in the chat. David is gonna get to them in a bit. And also inviting my co-host David to take it up from here. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Ruth, and continue, Dr. Tabitha. So interesting storyline for you. That's a very non-normative detour, which works for you, like the scholars. But since you've also been a senior lecturer at Pone University and also at, is it Roslin in the UK?
Anglia Ruskin.
Yeah, Ruskin, yeah. So, and now as the current director of Mastercard Scholars Program at the University of Cambridge. So you are supporting a lot of emerging scholars. What do you say are the core insights about academia that you think you can give to early career researchers now with their experience?
Thank you. I guess what I see with early career researchers who go very far, is they're very willing to learn. So you find people who come here to do masters, for example. We get scholars who are, of course, the cream of the cream, wherever they've come from, the top in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, Eswatini, they're the cream of the crop where they come from. And they come here and they get shocked by the kind of the pace of learning and the kind of teaching that happens in this setting. So this setting is very much not rote. You don't go with a notebook and start writing notes. The teacher gives you stuff, you come to work and you discuss. And people, really struggle at the beginning. It's quite a big change for them. And we watch them, go through these stages. And now that we're on our fourth cohort, we see them struggle. And, by November, they're just like really scared because they're just about to submit their first assessment. And they're like, oh my God, are we going to make it? And every year we see them just, rise above. We get almost 10% of our scholars get distinctions. They get masters with distinctions here in Cambridge. And distinctions in Cambridge they're not just handed over to you. This is a sign that, the potential in Africa is huge. And people come here and they do really well, but they do struggle at the beginning. But what I find really useful is just being willing to change the way you learn, being willing to admit that, I don't understand this, and really putting the work in. So it's just really putting in the work. I feel in academia, you can be as bright as a whatever, but if you don't put in the work, it's not going to work. It's not like A-levels, O-levels, where you could just wing it. Here, it requires, a lot of sitting to read and write, a lot of discipline, and a lot of humility to say, actually, I don't understand this. I need to go back and, look at an undergraduate course and see whether I can learn from it. So that humility and that willing to put in the work is what separates the very good people from people who just keep up along the way.
Oh, great! Yeah, the attitude to want to learn is a very core thing. So is that the same for you, like in your early career? Like, is that the same thing that you're finding out, like with your new scholars? Is it the same, or has it changed over time?
In terms of, has it changed?
Is it the same, like that attitude to learn? Do you find those the same values that are required for early career researchers? Is it the same that was expected of you, like early in your career, or has it changed over time now?
Yes, I think there's a lot of expectations, and things have changed a lot. Things keep changing. There's AI. How do you use AI to your advantage and not to mess you up? Because some people take AI and they mess themselves out with plagiarism and everything. But AI has its place. So how do you use that? So it's keeping up with what's going on in the world of science, learning from your peers. Really, I would say with a very early career researcher, is the mentor you get is really, really important. So the person who is your supervisor and your advisor and your mentor, it's really, really important to ensure that you listen to the wise words. If you're a female scientist, it's good to have women supporting you, because sometimes we try to pretend that we are all the same, but I think female scientists have their own issues. A lot of us want to have families. So how do you balance family and work? And sometimes having a female mentor is really useful for you, because they'll kind of tell you, they'll advise you, and not just one, maybe a few, because some people make certain decisions that you kind of think, sure, I'll do that. But, it's good to have a balance. But I would say, yes, get a good mentor, be really open to learning, and be open to the new things going on around you. Be open also to being more, in this era, there's a lot of need to be multidisciplinary. So don't be too, just be open to also learning from other fields. And being multidisciplinary these days works very well, because we need to be able to pivot into different directions. So whatever you're doing, add something that is outside your, if you're spending all your time in the lab, what else can you add to your skills that will be useful when you get out? So you're not just a lab scientist, you've got that external view. If you're an epidemiologist, if you're out in the field, what do you need to add that will give you that extra bit of something? So we always need to be thinking about things that you can add, whether it's being able to be really good at public engagement or whatever it is, but something extra other than just that degree that you're doing.
That's great. And it's amazing how you pivoted from malaria research to storytelling. And I don't know if Rachel Jones, I think I've seen her, like you mentioned, like maybe she was a mentor when you were at the National Press Foundation. Would you describe how she shaped maybe this pivoting and how she shaped your career?
Yes, I had been out because I took a break from science and I was writing and I wasn't getting anything published. And she came to KEMRI to do something. I don't remember what it was. And I reached out to her and she said, oh, come to see me at the Nation Media House. So I went up to meet her at the Nation Media House, and she was very impressed that I made the effort to come to see her. And she was like, okay, why don't you send me something? So I sent her articles, and the first few articles, she had this traffic lights is in red, green, yellow, and she really, colored my document. But I was very eager to learn. And I was like, yeah, fine, I'll do everything. I'll do what you need. And what I like about how Rachel Jones mentored me was that she took me up to a certain point, and then she said, don't send me anything, just go straight to the editors from this point on. So she gave me that confidence to kind of feel like, oh okay, I'm good enough. And I can just start, going to whichever editor I wanted to. So I think she was a very, very good mentor, because I think sometimes mentors can also hang on to their proteges for too long. And it's nice to have a mentor who also lets you go and say, come on, you can do it, just get on with it. So she was a very good mentor in that way.
Okay. Can you mention some behind the scene advice that she was giving you during that time?
I think during that time, I didn't realize the importance of people connecting to other people. So sometimes when you're writing a story about science, it's all about the science. And she's like, can you go and interview somebody who has suffered from X? And I'd be like, And at the first time, I almost thought, can I just cook this up? And she was just like, you go find a person, interview them, blah, 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 blah. So I got the hang of starting to interview people and making the story very, very personal. So it's, getting people to speak. And that way people can relate with that person and therefore relate to the science. So that was really, really useful. And also learning how to just really summarize and make sure that the science, you're not quoting p-values, you're not quoting relative risks and odds ratios, you're really, really bringing it down to a way that I can give this to my mother and she'll understand, that kind of level. So that was a quick learning curve, because I just come from writing a thesis and publishing my papers. So it was quite a speedy curve.
Okay, yeah, nice. Personalizing stories. Something I've had a lot in storytelling. You have to have a persona. Don't just give the figures.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tabitha. We are at the half-hour mark. If you're joining us live, you can always leave your questions on YouTube, and then we can have them posted and answered by Dr. Tabitha. So we can move on. And Ruth, you can let me know when you have questions from the audience. So going back to your book on 12 Remarkable African Life Scientists, you talk of values of passion, patience, and progress. Those are things that you're not taught in school. Those are the intrinsic values. Can you talk more about how you come up with those three? And maybe you can describe a bit about your book and those scientist studies that you were talking about in your book.
Yes. So one thing that makes a very good scientist is somebody who's really passionate about what they're doing. You really need to be, you're not doing something because your supervisor says that's a good thing to do. You're doing something because you really think that it is worthwhile doing. Whether it's worthwhile just because it's fun, because sometimes sometimes we are so, it has to be solving a problem, blah, 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 blah. But sometimes you can be doing something because it's so innovative, it's new, it's bringing in good knowledge, and you just find this particular thing exciting. It doesn't matter that at that moment it may not have real life, usefulness immediately, but it's something that you find exciting, you're passionate about. Just do it, because it's something that you wake up in the morning and you're going to do that piece of work and you're jumping out of bed with joy because I'm going to the lab and I'm going to do all this pipetting and I'm going to do all that. It's good to give you some sort of joy. Sometimes, when you go into the lab, there's something almost meditative about lab work, and it leaves you feeling, oh, that was really good. You feel like you've ticked a box and you've done some good job. So whatever gives you that kind of satisfaction, doesn't matter what others think about it, it's how it works for you. So you need to have that passion. But also the patience is the fact that things don't always work the way you want. So you'll see people in the book who, you went back, the experiment failed, you went back again, it failed again, you went back again. But because they're passionate about what they're doing, they'll have that longevity, that ability to stay on and make sure that they get the things they want. So the people who make it really do have that. They really do have a lot of patience. If you read the book, nobody had an easy ride. It wasn't like, I went this way and I went this way and it just went, and I am now a superstar, It doesn't work like that. There's always a lot of detours. There are people who really, struggle with family. There are people who struggle with the experiments working. There are people who struggle with institutions that are not very supportive. So there's all sorts of people who struggle with failing exams. So, you fail and you try again, and you fail and you try again. So all that is part of, that kind of patience and resilience. And I guess the resilience couldn't have worked with the PPP, but that is another word that would be really useful for science. And of course, if you hang around and you put in the work, a lot of hard work, then you will progress. I think we don't hear enough stories of high-flying scientists, but there are plenty of those on the continent.
Okay. Yeah, nice. The 3P. I didn't know, like you used to call them the 3Ps, the PPP.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So what patterns have you learned from those stories that do surface and those that get overlooked and just get, they drown and we never get to see them? And probably they were also great, but we never got to see them as the audience.
Yeah, I think there are people who are very good at marketing themselves, I think. So there are people who have a lot of presence. There are people who, scientists tend to be very unwilling to talk about themselves and talk about their work. So even when it came to this book, I think people agreed because of my background that they could see, oh, okay, she's been a scientist, she's done this, she's published. So they're not explaining basic things. And when we talk about science, we could talk quite quickly about things without having big explanations. So I think that's one of the things that work. But scientists are very, very often unwilling to talk about themselves, often unwilling to put themselves above and to be seen, to be talked about. Biggest fear being they're afraid that we may get it wrong and say the wrong things. They fear being misquoted. They fear the media going off and saying things that don't align with what they're actually doing. So they tend to be quite averse to publicity. But I think things are changing. People are becoming more open. People are, opening the lab, and people are coming in to see what scientists do. So things have changed a lot. But I would encourage scientists to, engage with that thing. Going to secondary schools, talking to students about science, writing articles in the newspapers. Letting students know that this is possible, because I think progress comes from us as Africans addressing our own problems. Because if we keep on relying on aid from abroad, when it comes to research grants, a lot of time scientists have to get grants from abroad, and grants from abroad tell you to do X, Y, Z, and you're forced to align your research with what people in the North want to do. So if we get more people interested in science, make it just part of our conversation, it'll be easier perhaps to go to the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science, and say, come on, put some money aside. We've got money. Governments keep saying they don't have money, but there is always money to do some really weird things. So I'm sure there'd be money to do science. So we can ask and push for more research to address the issues we want to address, not the issues that funders from the North want to address. That's one thing that I think can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, true. And it's interesting and ironical. Initially, you mentioned that those people who publish those stories, they themselves would not want to be out there. It's interesting. So I want to give it back to Ruth. Do you have any questions from the audience?
There's actually questions from the audience. I was just going to paste them right now, but maybe I can just read quickly now that I'm here. So Anita says, how can early career scientists challenge exclusionary norms like gatekeeping, authorship politics, or elitism without risking their careers?
That's a tough one. I think what I would say is we need to network a lot more on the continent. One of the issues I find among African scientists is that we have very strong collaborations with the North. So you talk to a scientist and they'll say, oh, my things are in Oxford. Oh, my thing is in Berkeley. My thing is with London School. So we are very aligned with Northern partners, but among ourselves, we are not talking. And if among ourselves as Africans, we don't form strong networks where we can, apply for grants together, where, sometimes I find that, someone in West Africa is talking to someone in the UK, and then this person in the UK is talking to somebody in Nairobi, for example. And then you're thinking, oh, these people have so much knowledge, but it's because they've gotten your knowledge, they've gotten this knowledge, and they are working with it together and then telling you, these great things. But you would have told each other these things. You'd have told each other these things. So that South-South collaboration is something that I think is very, very important, that we as scientists talk to each other. The publishing thing is quite, it's a difficult one, because one thing is that, everybody keeps saying, scientists from Africa contribute 2% of all the academic writing, but the reality is that we do a lot of publishing, but we are publishing in our journals that are not recognized internationally. So how do we get our journals to be recognized internationally? How many scientists on the African continent are using, for example, African Journal Online as a database to collect information and to write their papers from? How much of African research is in your literature reviews? Are we all doing Elsevier and all these other people, but not our own African journals? So it becomes difficult because we don't value our own journals. We all want to publish internationally, and even your promotions will be based on where you've published, how many you've published, and where you've published. So it becomes a bit problematic. So yes, there are issues, but I think even us ourselves on the continent are not working together. We're not respecting our own journals more. But it is hard to do that as an individual. You can't stand on your own and say, me, I'm going to do that. We need to have networks. Strong networks where, if we decide as Africa, you know what? Africa Medical Journal is going to be it's going to be at the same level as blah, 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 blah. So when you're getting promotions, if you publish in East Africa Medical Journal or African Journal, it's the same as Tropical Medicine, International Health, for example. I'm talking about health because this is what I know. But if we don't do that, don't expect some foreigner will come and start, giving your journals as prestige. We have to be ourselves to give that journal. But I also understand that we need a critical mass of scientists in Africa speaking saying the same thing together. So it's, respecting our own journals, pushing our governments to give funding for research, so we're not all looking north for research. But you can't do it on your own. You need networks, and we need to start building those. Especially you young, you're young lot. You're much more interconnected than my generation when we were doing our research work. So you're much more connected. You're able to do those networks more. You're able to make noise. The younger generation are capable of making noise that moves things. So you can use that noise to do things. I really believe that it's going to have to come from us. We've spent too much time blaming the North for what's going on. What about us in the continent? What are you doing to help ourselves?
And I absolutely love that particular idea. And I think this sort of conversation has been going on for a while. And I think it's just time for people to actually work it out. Because everyone says, oh yeah, we need to do this, we need to do this, but no one is doing it. No one is doing it. No one is willing to put in their shoe and say, okay, I mean, it's not a one person's thing, but we have to move it as a mass, but there has to be a starting point somewhere.
There has to be a starting point, but it does feel risky. Anyone who will stand out. It feels risky, and perhaps it is a little bit risky. So I can understand why people are slow to do it. But if you are a network, it becomes easier.
All right. Anita has a second question, which is many opportunities, actually, now that you're speaking about networks, many opportunities come through networks. What are the unspoken ways young researchers build meaningful connections?
So I'd say one thing that I see with senior researchers that they really like is they just like people just out of the blue showing up. I'll tell you that when I got my job, I had heard about KEMRI, and at that time I'd finished my master's and I was working in I'm a vet, so I was doing veterinary epidemiology, but I was interested in moving into human health. So I heard about this place and I just went to the office and I just made an appointment, and then I went and saw this person and said, I'm really interested in this. And the guy gave me a job to do, and he said, just, okay, fine, let's have a chat, let's talk. And that's how I got in. And there's lots of people who that's their story, that you kind of make that connection. So I'd say be brave. People do like people coming out of the blue, even here in Cambridge, and people will tell you, I'm interested in this. Not just wild, just connecting for the sake of it. You've got something that you want to talk about. People are really willing to listen. So you can, sit with somebody and say, I've got this idea, I'm really lost, can you help me? People feel, you've made that effort to reach out. People do really reciprocate, they really listen. So I would advise just being brave, just get on with it. I mean, what's the worst that the person can do is to say no. If you decide you want to, form a network, get the people you want sitting together. Now we've got all these virtual platforms. get on with it and just do it. So I would say that just be brave. Hearing a no doesn't kill. Actually, it doesn't matter if somebody says,
yeah.
you know, it's nothing really, but you've got to make that effort. Then you can say in your head, I tried.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. But I think the quote I'm gonna go with is hearing a no doesn't kill. That is really good and refreshing to hear. Okay, so Lina says, so happy to finally put the face to a name. I have heard of the book, but never had a chance to read it. I guess it's time to get a copy.
Thank you.
All right. So as we wrap up, Dr. just you know, in a few questions, we still I think have a few minutes left. There's often this term about, you know, book smart versus street smart. And I think we've covered like, you know, we've spoken about how people should pursue something that is fulfilling for them. And, you know, there's this often terms that are used interchangeably. So from your journey or your lived experiences, what do you think has shaped the way you think and practice science? I mean, now you're more into administration, but like speaking from, you know, these terms, book smart, street smart, what do you think has shaped your way of doing science, especially now that you've even transitioned into administration?
Book smart and street smart. I think book smart is always good. Being able to be academically strong is always good, but that is something that can be worked on. I think there's a lot of, you know, when you were growing up, there's a lot of, you know, Mjinga, you know, there's that kind of like, there are people who are clever and there are people who are stupid, right from primary school, which is ridiculous. You know, when you think about it, you're just doing addition, subtractions. Why should somebody call you stupid? But you know, we do have that thing of labeling people. I really, you know, and I think sometimes, you know, unfortunately in our time, there's a lot of people learning cognitive development issues that were just labeled stupid. But for the vast majority of us, it is really just work. You know, you're given something to do and you just work on it. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I believe science is also just like a musical instrument. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And the better you sound, the better, you know, the more you practice, the better you are at it. When it comes to streetwise, I'd say this is about, you know, how you tackle issues around you and how you deal with issues. I would say the most important thing is to stay humble. You know, just because you've done a master's and a PhD in Oxford, Cambridge, blah, 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 you don't, you know, just remember, wherever it is that you got your PhD or master's, stay grounded. Nobody is too small or too big for you. You know, you stay grounded. And also don't take things personally. You know, if something isn't working for you, don't burn your bridges. You know, like if you've got a supervisor who's a real pain, you know, don't leave that place, you know, having abused people and blah, 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 blah. You know, live in peace. As much as it's possible, live in peace. So try and create peace. And I'm not just, you know, not just peace at work, but also peace in your home. Because scientists sometimes have that reputation of you spend all your time in the office, you don't even see your kids growing, you know, you go off and do something for 2 years away from your children, you know, just kind of really make decisions that work for you and your people, you know. By your people, I mean your family, your wife, husband, children. So being really considerate. But making sure, for me, I believe one of the things is to make sure that you make your life as stress-free as possible. Create as much joy as you can in the things that you do. So when you're in your home, let your home be a place of peace. You know, the kids get home and they put their legs up and they throw their bags on the ground because they know they've arrived home. It's a place of peace. When your workmates come to the office and they come and see you, they know that you listen to them and you'll be a place of peace. So create peace. Life is short, eh? Yeah, life is short. So make sure your life is peaceful and joyful, and it is you. You've got that responsibility on yourself to be a peaceful person and, you know, share peace and joy to the people around you and to your family as well, so that your life is rounded and wholesome, and your children are wholesome and your workmates are wholesome because of you. So I really do believe in peace and joy, because life is too short.
Peace and joy, life is too short. Absolutely. And finally, Dr. Ari, just my final question for you is that if you had the power to redesign how science is practiced, taught, or shared in Africa. I will repeat that. So if you had the power to redesign how science is practiced, taught, or shared in Africa, what change would you champion first and why?
Practiced, taught, and shared.
Yeah.
If I can start with taught, I think there's a mentality. I think there's a problem with the way teachers are trained. And the way in which science comes out. I remember I went to a very good school, but we had a physics teacher I just couldn't get. And to me, physics was just hard. We had a maths teacher who was really, really good. And maths, we were just flying with our O-level maths. So there's a way in which you can teach things that makes it very, very hard. And sometimes I think it's because the teachers themselves perhaps don't get the basic principles right. And so it becomes very hard to pass on a message when you yourself, you don't understand. And it's not just Kenya. Even here, I see with my children, the same thing, that science is not taught very well. And so because the basic principles are not understood by the teacher, then they're not passed on to the student. And that translates as science is hard. So I would say it needs to come from basic principles, and teachers need to be taught slightly differently. When it comes to how we practice, I think we are, as researchers, the same old problem that we are too much beholden to the North. So sometimes I feel we're not addressing the issues that actually bother us. So we can, like sometimes I look and I think, who is, when you're talking about social science, people are always talking about your attitudes towards this, attitude towards this. I don't hear enough about the things that really bother us, things that really get under our skins. Who is talking about theology? There are very few theologians on the African continent. Who's talking about how that's messing us up? How our interpretation of scripture is really messing us up as a continent. It's not a small problem anymore. It's a continent-wide problem. Yeah. Why are we not addressing these issues? What are the issues that are bothering us, and who is addressing them? And who's going to, if we don't address them ourselves, who's going to address them? So it's but that can only happen if we fund our own research. I think it's very hard for someone sitting in London to understand our issues. They'll see the broad issues, they'll look at the data and say, this is a problem in Africa, but they really don't know what's happening. So we need our governments putting money into research so that we start addressing the issues that bother us, not the issues that the North thinks bother us. Yeah.
I like that. And finally, shared, how science is shared.
Yeah, I think how science is shared has been improved a lot. I think it's improved a lot. There's, you've got podcasts like this, you've got TV programs that, put a little bit of science in there. So there's a lot going on, but there's still a lot more that can be done. I think there's space for example, the book that I've written is being used by KEMRI School Engagement Program in Kilifi, and they're finding there's a lot of buy-in for things like that. And so there's more that can be done, because that book was about life scientists. We don't have enough about the physical sciences. We don't have about IT. So there's still a lot that can be done. But to write a good book needs time, and somebody, and it needs somebody with that expertise as well, because people don't want to be bothered with basic science. They want somebody who understands. So somebody who understands the science to write a book on IT, write a book on the physical sciences in a level that young people can understand. So people can see a lot of role models. The more people see that this thing is possible, the more people are able to do this thing. So I'd like to see a lot more of that in terms of, what's being shared. But I think it's improved a lot. I think there's a lot of improvement. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. And I totally agree with you. Like, the more people see people that have actually walked the same path as them, the more likely to say, okay, I can actually build a career here, I can actually make it. So I agree with you that we need to do more in that space. And so that brings us to the end of the questions that we had for you. But before we close, maybe is there something that you'd like to add that probably we haven't asked, in sort of like a summary on this conversation?
I don't know what that. I would say that I would encourage all young people who are interested in science to take it up. If you're interested in a career in research, do pursue it. And I hope you find a lot of joy in what you do. And most importantly is pursue that thing that looks weird and difficult and odd, but that you feel in your heart you need to be doing. So pursue it. Some of you may be sitting here and maybe what you need to be doing is starting a church. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but starting a school, starting a medical center, starting something, whatever it is that you feel that is your I've been calling a calling, it's a thing that you really feel that you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Then engage with it, because you've only got one life.
Absolutely. You've only got one life. And so you have to do something that is fulfilling to you. Thank you so much, Dr. I think you have shared so much, nuggets with us. I've been trying to just summarize a few of them, but I hope that as people get to even listen to this video, later on, they can still pick from the conversation that we've had, they can still pick all the wise things that you have shared with us, and to understand that, the environment that we are living in, and that you can actually pursue things in different ways, and that you need to actually be in a space where it fulfills you, and somewhere where you feel like you're making impact and not just doing things for the sake of doing it. And so with that, I'd like to bring this to a close. And thank you so much, Dr. Ari, for, sharing your time with us this Friday afternoon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, that brings us to the end of our first conversation on unwritten rules in science. I hope you have picked what we term unwritten. I know there was a comment I saw online where someone was asking, do you know these unwritten rules? Of course, if they are not written, then they are unwritten. And so I hope that you have picked them, and that they are able to help you in your different careers. And with that, we'll see you on the next segment of My Science Journey. Goodbye for now.